Hello, my name is Rachel. I am a knitter, a crocheter, a teacher, a mom, and I love to talk about my experiences with different knitting patterns, crochet patterns, and just life in general. And so, if this seems like your cup of tea, stay tuned and listen as I share with you my current whips. If you are a new viewer, welcome. And if you are a returning, thank you so much for joining me again. And so, on today's episode. I don't number my episodes because I'm not consistent at doing this. I am someone when I find a free moment in my life where I'm not dealing with one of my kids or doing something for work where I will get on the camera and to share my thoughts or rambles or joys. So today I wanted to talk about several things. One, I wanted to talk about knitting and its supports that it offers us, as well as taking care of your body when you're going through aches and pains. And the final thing I wanted just to touch on is about representation. And so, as I shared before on this particular channel, I am a teacher of AP African American Studies. I've been a part of this experience since the launch of this course. So, as a third year returning vet, so to speak, in AP African American Studies, there were so many things I learned. And one of the things I learned by teaching this course is the experiences of those who are into quilting and knitting and the representation of people of African descent in that. And it's been absolutely incredible. So, for example, I have taught my students over the years about Sojourner Truth, but I did not know until I looked really closely at a photo, because when I look at her photos, I never really paid that level of attention to what she was doing in the photos until it was a part of the expectation when teaching it to my students. And I noticed she was knitting and that she's holding her yarn in a similar fashion that many of us who are throwers would hold it too. And I was just like, what? I'm like, how could I not notice? I've seen this iconic image of this woman for so many years, and I never noticed that she was holding yarn in her hand. I never noticed that she was carrying a yarn bag on her body. And so, like, that was really fascinating to me about the fact about that here is this personal detail about this woman, about something else that she did. And in addition to inspiring so many people, she also made beautiful items with her hands. So that was a really fun fact for me to learn. And I share that with my students, and I use that as an opportunity, a segue into teaching them how to knit. And so we go through a variety of different activities where they learn about different crafts that are connected to the African diaspora and about how it was used in forming communities, I should say, not just African communities, but in communities in general, and how that's translated to other parts of the world and how other communities are formed through crafting. And so with sharing that with my students, I realized that knitting has such an inclusive community in so many ways, but there's also this lack of community, especially around those who look like me. Most of my close knitting friends are not people who look like me, who are in love with this craft as much as I am. So I'm hoping to continue to use this channel as an opportunity to foster community among those people of color who engage in knitting, who love this craft, who engage in knitting as well as crochet. Because although you may see some of it in the background, like there's my Tunisian crochet hooks right there in that little pink jar. It is definitely not something I do as often, but what I definitely love to get down and dirty with is my knitting. So let me share with you my community, the current knitting project that has my full-on attention. So I did two test knits this summer. I did a test knit for Veronica Lindbergh. I did a test knit for a pullover that she did. And because it's a secret test knit, I can't show you pictures of it. So you're like, why I mention it? I understand. I feel you on that. But anywho, I did two of those test knits. It came out fairly well with the pullover. The cardigan, not so much. I started that cardigan over multiple times. I just didn't like the fabric. The design was really great. The directions and the pattern were outstanding. Like, she has gotten so much better at providing clarity about the step-by-step process that you as a new knitter or experienced knitter need to take in order to be successful in completing a project that's going to look magnificent and elegant, but casual if you wanted to as well. So with all that said, I'm really grateful for those 2 opportunities to work on those test knits. But now that I'm done test knitting, and I don't foresee myself doing any more test knits for the rest of the year, and I do mean the rest of the year, my goal is to really cut back on some of the items I have on my queue and just really focus on what it is I want to currently make. Like, what is my current passion? What is it that I want to wake up in the morning and put my hands on immediately? So there are 2 works in progress right now that I have that I absolutely am falling in love with. The first one, which is a summer knit that I'm doing in my new project bag that I got while I was in Vermont. I was in Vermont for a work event where I was teaching other teachers how to teach AP African American Studies. And it was an incredible experience, and I was having such a great day, but it was raining. And one of the yarn stores that I have been curious about for a couple of years now was open. And I'm like, when am I ever going to have an opportunity to come here? The only time I'm ever in Vermont is when I'm at this particular institute. I'm going to Jay Peaks, which is a ski resort in upstate New York, Vermont, excuse me, or when I'm on my way to Canada. I've only been to Canada once. So it's not like I go often. But anywho, I was like, this is the time. So I walked in the rain. It's pouring down rain. I don't care. And I get to the yarn store and I get a chance to make my acquisitions. I showed my yarn in my previous video. And this is the project bag that I purchased as well. And the color is orange, which was my cousin Tanea's favorite color. So I try to do things to honor her memory because she's still a part of who I am. And I decided to make the home camisole as my summer knit. I've been going back and forth about like, what's going to be my summer knit project? And I decided to do the home camisole as my summer knit. And here we go. So it's all scrunched up because I have it on the, let me make sure I don't drop it. I have it on the try-on tube. But I know it's hard to see. Here we go. I have the first part. So as you can see, you start off with doing in triangles. You start with the strap first, and then you do increases following along with the pattern until you have your size. And so for me, once this gets stretched out, I know it's hard to see, this will definitely fit. I may want to, once I join in the body, make it longer, but I didn't want a deep V. I wanted it a little higher up. So I'm excited about the colors I chose because I had this yarn for almost 2 years now, and I had no idea what I was going to do with it. Didn't know if I wanted to make a pair of socks. And it has stellina, I think that's what it's called, which is basically like a glittery thread woven within the yarn. And the yarn was hand dyed by a person. Her company's called Threads. I think it's like Threads by Michelle. And I accidentally stumbled upon her. I was looking for yarn stores that were produced by Black yarn dyers. And for some reason, her store came up. I later found out that she doesn't identify as a person of color, but it was just some misinformation that was online, which happens. So, but her yarn, hand-dyed yarn, is absolutely beautiful, very bright and vibrant. And this particular yarn, this is a sock weight yarn that has speckle. It's called Gothic Beauty. There's 409 yards. It's 90% superwash wool and 8% luxe. Lux, I don't know, Lurex. Oh. Anywho, with this particular yarn, it's not very soft. I just want to name that. I don't know if it's because of the speckle that's making it it's a little crunchy to touch. And I'm hoping that when I soak it in wool wash, that it will soften up and that it will be more wearable. It definitely has good drape, so I'm not really worried about that. And I love the color changes in it. I love the variations of it. This is one of the reasons why I decided to do it, because I didn't want a solid black camisole or a solid red camisole. I wanted something with a little bit more oomph to it. Now, the pattern that I'm using is by Caidree, and this particular pattern calls for the size I'm doing, I need a little over 500 yards of yarn. And I might need more than that because I tend to make my tops a little bit longer because although my torso is of average length, it can appear. I don't know. I just want it to be long enough. So I do have some black yarn that I could use to supplement as well. So I could potentially use it for the bottom part or do helical knitting as well. So we'll see if I actually end up needing it. It will be more black at the bottom, whereas it's more red and black at the top. So I love the fact that I started at different parts of the yarn for each side. And so it looks slightly different on each side, but at the same time, it looks cohesive. So overall, I'm really excited the way it's coming out. I am now working on the back side of it. And so your expectation is to pick up stitches along the way, and then you do the back side of the triangle, you join together and you knit it around according to the size increases of the pattern. And so overall, definitely like it. I'm glad I picked it up. I have been on the fence about what would be my summer knit, what would be that one garment that I'm going to call my summer knit garment. And this one's the one that worn out. I don't know how, but it did. I didn't plan on it at all. It really was one of those randoms. And so my goal is to work on this every Sunday. And so because usually on Sundays I do crochet, but there aren't any crochet projects that I'm gravitating towards, and I don't feel like making a blanket is a little too warm for that. Plus with the other whip I'm going to talk about in a moment is really just not my jam. But this is fitting that Sunday mark because I needed a knit or a project for Sundays when I take my son to swim, we go to track, we have a lot of little random activities that we do on Sundays. So it's a lot of me like getting up and down in order to address the needs of my boys. And so I decided that I needed a simple project that I can read ahead in a pattern and pretty much stay on track about what I need to do. So with that said, this is my Sunday project. It's my mindless knit. And my goal for this is what I did all last Sunday. And so in one day, and I probably worked on it a total like 3, maybe 4 hours if you added all the stop and goes. And I got the 2 triangles and started picking up stitches for the back before I retired the project for the rest of the day because I had to play my Uno tournament with my son. So that's what I'm working on here. And I'm using my new knitting needles. So I can't recall if I talked about this in my last video, but I went on Temu, Temu, and it's a store similar to Amazon that sells a lot of products, that are made in Eurasia. So primarily in China, but different parts of European products are also sold on their website. And they had these red knitting needles that looked almost identical to my tulip needle, my tulip crochet hooks. And I love my tulip crochet hooks. They are my favorite. I love the glide of it. I love the thumb rest. And whenever I do make a crochet project, those are my go-to. Here, I'll show you what I mean. Those are my go-to crochet hooks. So here is one of my tulip crochet hooks. Yep. So as you can see, it has the thumb rest and it has that smooth shaft. And I just absolutely love it. It is. Anytime I look at I'm making a crochet product, I'm always like, can I use my tulip? Because it is definitely my preference. Here's another one as well. So I have it in multiple sizes. I do like the Prims hooks, but these are definitely the tulip are my favorite. So because tulip are my favorite, not just because of the color red, because I do like the color red. I like those. I love the shaft. It makes it a lot easier to glide the yarn through or whatnot. And I was hoping to have that same experience with these. One of the things that attracted me to them was the price point. Your average knitting needle set for me, I know when I first purchased my very first interchangeable needles, I spent a little over $60, and that includes shipping and handling. And it was my Knit Picks, what was it? I can't remember the name of them. Cubics, there it is. So it's a stainless steel. It's like a ergonomic knitting needle. I really enjoyed it, had a good knitting experience with it, but it didn't have as many sizes that I needed. And I noticed that I wasn't experienced enough to deal with the slippage, meaning that my stitches would sometimes fall off the knitting needles, and I was just not getting appropriate attention. So then I decided to try out bamboo needles, and so I bought the Clover bamboo needles. That just didn't work well. I was feeling, to be honest with you, I was just feeling super guilty because I spent $85, and I was like, oh my God, $85 on knitting needles. Horrible. So I was like, no, I got to return it. That's just too extravagant. And then I found an alternative because I wanted something with a little bit more pointiness at the tip. And so I did a lot of research by that point, and I thought the ones that would work best for me was my Cabaz knitted needles that I got. So Here are my kabas. I love these. I love the sound. I know some of you may not, but I love the sound of the way that when the tips touched one another, it really felt like I was knitting. I love the pointiness of it because I was really getting into my stitches, especially when I was doing lace knitting. And I just had an overall a really positive experience up until, let's see if I still have them in here, up until the point where the the tip, it started to rub off whatever glaze this is. This is actually not metal. This apparently this is some form of glaze, and underneath it was a whole different metal, and it was snagging on my stitches. And so I was like, okay, let me just buy a replacement. You can see it a little bit that's happening on this one. I know it's probably hard to tell, but do you see that little brownness that's popping up? That means that the glaze on this is starting to wear off. But anywho, it started to happen there. So that happened. Then this part here, the connection started to pull. And it happens with my Chagu Forte, which I'll talk about in a moment. So that was happening. I was like, dang. And then I was just done with these needles by then. It kept unscrewing, even though I would use the appropriate tighteners that comes with the kits, you know, these little things right here. I was using that, and it kept coming undone. I would be knitting away, and next thing you know, oops, I'll get that in a minute. Next thing you know, it will just start to unscrew itself. So I was like, oh my gosh. And so one day I was like tightening it, and I had looked really closely, and I noticed that one of my knitting needles was slightly bent in a curve. And I was like, when did that happen? I haven't even used this. It was my first time using the 4.5, excuse me, 3.5 knitting needles from this kit. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I reported the issue to the company. They were kind enough to send me a replacement for free. I sent photographs of what happened. They didn't like charge me for shipping and handling. They took me at my word and sent me a replacement. So I am grateful for that. But I don't go to these unless I absolutely have to, because every single time I do, I have an issue. So I share all that to just provide context about my desire to buy another knitting needle set. I didn't need one. I have my Chagu Forte. However, I've noticed lately that the connection between the tip and the shaft of the knitting needle seems to be pulling apart a little bit, especially for my 4mm. And I think it's the way I push my yarn. And so when I push my yarn forward, I tend to hold the tip of it so that way I can grip it as I'm pushing it up. And then while I'm knitting, I then will pull the tip back, pull the other needle back, and I'm holding it. And I guess, and somehow when I'm pushing and pulling, I'm actually pulling apart the tip from the shaft. And so my Chagu Forte, unfortunately, I'm starting to experience some issues with those. And I spent way too much money on those knitting needles. I spent over $300. They were on, when I initially purchased them, they were $299. And I felt in my feelings about spending $299 on a knitting needle set. So I returned them. I canceled the order. I was like, don't do that. But then I got influenced. I kept watching various videos, and then it will pop up again. And I was like, don't buy it, don't buy it, don't buy it. Then I got a bonus for one of the consulting things I had did. And I was like, and I obviously, you know, paid my bills and whatnot. And I'm like, I have this surplus money in my yarn budget. I'm going to dip into my yarn budget and buy these needles because I want them, and that's it. So I did. Bought them, and I convinced myself that I love the needles, and I'm like, you have to love them because you spent over $300 on them. So you have no other choice but to love these needles and give them all the love and care. So I made myself only use my Chagu Forte needles for 325 days because I spent $325, which includes shipping and handling. But now my 325 is up, and I can actually like share out. There are definitely some good features about those needles. I love the tips. The tips are outstanding. Here, I'll show you what they look like. The tips are outstanding. Absolutely love them. They're great for the lace knitting. They're definitely great on like the hand fatigue. Like my hands do not hurt because it is made. The version I have is made with the bamboo, the African wood, I should say. And so I definitely ebony. Yeah, it's like ebony and whatnot. So anywho, I love the lightness of them. I never had any unscrewing issues, which is pretty common with Chagu. They make really good connections. And so it's like I'm getting in there and I'm having a great time knitting with these particular needles. No complaints. However, there are some complaints. The cable that initially came with them, never used those. I ended up buying the redless cable because it just made for a better knitting experience. So that was an added expense. And then the sizes are all there, so I don't have to worry about that. But then I got into sock knitting. So I needed to buy the 2.0, the 2.2, and the 2.25 because for this particular set, it starts with 2.75. So I had to buy those because I didn't know it was a sock knitter until recently. So I ended up buying the fixed interchangeable, the fixed needles. Yeah, I didn't buy the interchangeable. I bought the fixed ones for the sock knitting. So with all that said, I was having some issues with my Chagu Forte because it was not giving me that same gliding experience I was having when I initially purchased them. And so I was hoping that when I bought this very closely similar to Chagu Forte. And well, the reason why I say this is not only because of the red lace cable that has the same memory as the other Chagu needles. I noticed the fact that I can manipulate it, I can bend it, it can do all that. Plus, I can use these red lace cables in my Chagu Forte. So that's an attraction. The other thing I really like about these knitted needles is that I noticed that once I oil them, I did have to do that because they had this like a tough aluminum feel to it. So I just took some baby oil and just rubbed it down, and it immediately softened the material, and it made for a much easier knitting experience. And I just went right into it and have had a pleasure. Then the yarn I'm using, I realize is not compatible with it. The yarn I'm using, I should probably use a stainless more of a stainless steel. But yeah, I even noticed with those that this yarn just does not glide well. So it's not the yarn, it's not the knitting needle, it's the yarn for the reason why there's not as much glidance, and I have to do more force to get the stitches to move back and forth. Overall, it's been a fairly positive experience using these generic knitting needles. It doesn't have a name. When you order them, you get this lovely red case. And so, as you can see, the stitching is not like of high quality, but you pay what you get. I spent less than $35 on this, and that includes shipping and handling. So it comes in, it starts in size, looks like 3.5, and it goes all the way up to 10 millimeters. There's even a 7 millimeter. So it goes 4.55, 5.5, 6. There isn't a 6.5, but there is a 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I like that. And after you, on this page, on the next one, you have these little stitch holders. You have some more cables, and you also have some connections to help you if you need to extend the cable. And it came with the twist and all that. There's a little bit of a gap here, and so you just have to be careful. If you have like really small items there, it can slide out. So I'm trying to be careful with that. But overall, I'm not dissatisfied with this. I don't foresee myself purchasing any more knitting needles. I'm donating one of my interchangeable sets to the knitting club at my school. So that way, students who are new to knitting will have access to some quality tools. Because when you have access to quality tools, it will improve your experience. And here we go, I dropped the cord. I definitely would recommend doing some research about what knitting needles work best for you, and to see whether or not it's a good fit. Again, my experience so far with these new knitting needles that I got, it really just comes down to the yarn. The yarn I'm using just isn't one of those slip and slide. If it was a full 100% superwash merino, I think I would have a better gliding experience. I assume I would have that. But very happy with that. The other whip I wanted to talk about with you, because I only have two on my needles. I don't have any other. I have that project and the second one, and this is the Artus Shawl. So on Sundays, I'm working on my home camisole, and every other day of the week, I am working on my shawl, and I am in love. Let me make sure I don't lose my place. I'm in love with this pattern. I fell in love with it when I was at the airport. That's when I first started it. I was waiting and waiting and waiting for my flight to finally leave the airport. And so it grew from being in my bag, because I literally packed, how many? I think I packed about 3 or 4 projects when I went to Missouri for the AP reading. And I ended up starting, I pulled out the yarn. I was like, might as well cast on now. I put on a little documentary and got started. And fell in love. The waffle stitch pattern was really easy to learn, and I decided to do different variations. I held part of the green yarn with mohair, and it makes this lighter color, and when I held it without the mohair is why it's a different color. So I did those variations because I wanted just to see what it looks like and love it. And from there, I put the gray and white one similar colors to the original design, not the exact colors, but very close, similar. So I had this like sage grayish color yarn. Here, let me see if I can hold it long. I have no idea where I got this yarn. I think I bought it from a local yarn store where they were selling um, local yarn and Virginia. It didn't have a tag. It didn't even have a tag to it. It was yarn they purchased from the farm that was near the store, and I bought one skein of this finger. I was like finger, and so I decided just to hold it double. And so I don't know what this is appearing on camera. It definitely appears more gray on camera, but it does have a little bit of this like gray tinge, this sage green um, to it. I love it. It's fuzzy, and I just can't wait. I think it has a mark on it. I really don't. Like I said, it didn't have a tag. I was in New York, and they had some Chinese sourced from a farm in the state of New York, and so it was really pretty. And here I am. So I purchased that, and I used that needed a product for it. Then I had this hand-dyed polywool yarn that I bought from Yarn Creations that I could not think of a pattern for. I used the same yarn to make a pair of gloves that I just didn't like the texture of it, even though I haven't what yet. I don't know if the texture of the is block, but I'm like, I don't want to use it for keeping it for pin gloves. So I opted not to do that anymore and try to think of what I was going to do with this very pretty, inexpensive hand-dyed yarn. Yes, this is considered hand-dyed. So I found that this pattern would be the one. So I completed, this is the Artus Shawl, Artes, and this was the first color work, and I really made some modifications to it, some intentional and some I was really into the audiobook and I wasn't paying attention to the knitting pattern, so I didn't do any free beats, didn't read it properly, but I think it adds a little flavor to it. So for example, I was supposed to do one color at a time and I ended up doing white, gray, white, gray, white, gray. I followed directions for the same time. Then I followed directions here, and then again, I started to get distracted from whatever it is I was watching, and so there's a little extra gray row, and I'm like, that adds a little extra flavor. And I realized I did not have enough stitches to do the next section of the pattern, so I did this round, 2 rounds of this of the green in order to make up for that because I needed 269 stitches in order to start this portion of the pattern and was not there yet. So I ended up casting on the right amount. You do still do increases, and this is the way that, oh my God, it smells like it's coming out so well. So I finished the bottom gray part of the pattern, and now I'm doing like the gold, and I got a little more space. I'm using it anyway. This is yang, yang yarn, and as you can see, let me get a little closer. It's had a little blue thread to it, to the gray, to the gold. It's absolutely so soft and so wonderful. The type of wool it is, honestly, I don't know. I misplaced it back, and I can't for the life of me find it. But if I do, I'm sure to say that I was hoping if I look again, it will magically appear. But so right now, I'm on the gold portion of the pattern. So I'm making the diamond, and it's coming out really well. I'm like so surprised. I was hesitant about this, and I'm reaching out to different members of the community who make this pattern. No one responded. I sent a message out to so many different people, and not a single person responded. I was like, dang, what did I say? I just was like, hey, but anyway, that's okay. I was able to figure it out myself. I kept restarting the pattern, and I realized the mistakes I was making. And then I just had my feet. I was like, I was going to go for it. And I'm so glad I did because the diamonds are making a beautiful appearance. I'm so proud of myself, and I can't wait to have some free time today to continue working on this and make sure it is staying on the needles really well. Unfortunately, what's fun is as you can, I don't know if you can see that. This is getting super loose. I know you can reach out to Chicago and send me a replacement needle for that. It's the yarn's not getting caught in a connection. I'm still having smooth sailing with that in. And I can see, I can just still slide my needle, slide my yarn out with no issue whatsoever. So it is definitely not having a negative impact on my knitting experience. So I don't feel the need to like reach out and ask them for it because I can still use this impeding my ability to knit on a garment. So that's why I'm not going to request a replacement for that. So I'm very excited about my decision to just do a focus on this particular pattern. My hope is that I have one, two, three. I have about three more sections to do before I start doing the final touches to the pattern. And I'm in no rush. That's the beauty of testing. When you're testing, you have to stick to a particular timeline and not in any rush. I'm hoping to have this job finished by the end of August, so that way I can continue on with some of my other projects. So let me share with you some of my other goals, see what you're thinking about as we transition into the fall and we'll look at the notes. So in addition to the shawl, which I'm absolutely in love with, and I'm finished with the really intricate steps of the mosaic portion of it, I am then going to cast on another pullover. So the pullover I want to do is a Caidree. This is another heavy pattern design that will require me to really read and pay close attention to the pattern. And so I'm going to have a hand on Camisole. So